Joining me now is actress, filmmaker and now author Nandita Das. Thank you very much for speaking to NDTV. You've dedicated the book to all the Mantos of the world. Explain that a little.
Yes, so I think in every era there have been Mantos who have sort of spoken truth to power, who have fought for what they believed in, who were courageous, who were fearless, who had a free spirit, and they've always been marginalized. They've always got a raw deal. And there are many Mantos even today, some away even from the media glare, some in jail, some have been killed. There are people who are still sort of fighting these battles for all of us. So I thought it would be most befitting if I dedicated the book to the Mantos of the world.
After that very acclaimed film, Manto, why did you feel the need to do this book?
For me, art has always been more a means to an end. It's not, both Firak and Manto were not things that I felt, okay, let me make a film, and I looked for a story. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have done either. So I would say for Manto also in 2012 when I started researching, and just the process was so long, 4 or 5 years of research with many stories. Then how do you collect the funds? Then how do you get the actors? How do you recreate Bombay and Lahore of the 40s in today's modern day clutter, when we have all these ACs jutting out and hoardings and mobiles ringing off? It's not easy, and in a shoestring budget in which I was working. So I just felt like there were so many stories that I hadn't shared. Of course, you do end up sharing some in various interviews for the film or with family and friends, but there were still some things that I felt I wanted to share. And I've also written in the book that it's not just the creative journey. It's also my socio-political journey, it's my emotional journey, it's the, the spiritual learnings, like letting go of things that you don't have control over, and which are always many. So all of that kind of found itself in the book.
Nandita, Manto never held anything back. He was known for being extremely blunt. He had a very sly sense of humor. For someone who's researched him for almost 8 years, give us a sense of what Manto's take would have been on what is currently happening in India.
There's so much of fear. I mean, people are self-censoring themselves. There is this kind of a doom. You feel, how much should we say, how much should we not? Will it be misconstrued? Will there be fake news? My video, will it be manipulated? There's so much of all that. But I think if Manto was here today, he would have still been just as fearless. Because if you see his times, he was also tried 6 times for cases of obscenity. The same stories that we celebrate today. So I'm sure it wasn't easy. The means have changed. I mean, even at that time, like how we get trolled today, at that time they would write anonymous letters. So I don't think there was, the things were so different. So I think he would have still been as fearless as he was. And the film, in fact, I did the film because I was concerned with what's happening today. And I felt if I made a film about today, it would just end up polarizing the conversation. We just don't want to hear the other. And in some ways, I took refuge in Manto. By telling his story, I was actually responding to what's happening today. Because in the film, you understand about identities. What are these identities that we thrust upon each other? What if I don't want to constantly carry an identity of my religion or of my gender? And yet it's constantly being thrusted on me. So it's about that, it's about freedom of expression, it's about free-spiritedness, it's about truth and courage. So all of these things are, today we are grappling with the same issues, and I think that's why the film was so relevant. And I've tried to share some of these backstories about why, when I did this film, what is it to do a film like this in today's times? What were the reactions? What is it to do by being a, sort of a hands-on mother? How do you juggle? Why are these questions even asked to us as to how do we balance life? So it's really taking my own self through this whole journey. So it was definitely cathartic, but I hope it's more than that.
Tell me, if there was one Manto story that you think is reflective of the times, which one would that be?
Well, in today's times, with all this NRC and CAA and the fact that 1.3 billion people have to prove their identity, some more than the others, I would say Toba Tek Singh, which is a timeless story. It's about, for those of you who don't know, it's about a lunatic asylum, and Manto begins the story by saying 2-3 years after partition, the governments of India and Pakistan decided to, I don't remember the exact words, but decided to swap their lunatics just as they had done with their prisoners on the lines of, religious identity, which means the Muslim lunatics from India had to go to Pakistan, and the Hindu and Sikh lunatics had to go from Pakistan to India. And this man who's constantly asking, the Sikh lunatic Bishan Singh, is constantly asking for his own village. Where does he belong? And he stands on his legs for 15 years and says that I'm only going to lie down when I finally reach my home. And he doesn't, because being a Sikh, he has to be in India, but actually his village is in Pakistan. So where does he really belong? That is what we are asking people, where do you really belong? And he was, he finally dies in the no man's land, and Manto kind of questions that on both sides there are these borders, and here lies, this man in death. And that is what we are doing. We are asking each one, where do you belong? And how do we answer that question? If you have been in this country for 4 generations, do you belong here, or do you belong to a country that was made 70 years ago just because you have a religious identity? It's crazy. This country was meant to be a secular, democratic country that believed in equality. As anybody who's sensitive and compassionate, it's like sort of a knee-jerk, wouldn't it be your instinctive reaction to want equality? So the fact that some have to keep proving their identity over and over again is really sad. Citizenship, sorry.
You spoke about polarization, and it seems to be all pervasive. Look at what happened to Deepika Padukone after she went to JNU, the attacks on her.
Absolutely.
And art and culture has such an strong impact on society.
Social media,
but looking at what happened with Deepika and the strong influencers that Bollywood is, do you think the film industry needs to do more to show their support for the students?
No, we definitely need more, and it's not just stars. We need every citizen to understand what are these myths that are being spread. Why are we having to prove our citizenship in a country that is so poor, that is uneducated? We all know how difficult it is to just find papers and to fill forms. Even if you take it in simple terms, how complicated it is. And why are we doing it at a time where our economy is in a mess, where unemployment is at its highest, where there are so many other problems that we need to tackle? Why do we have to change the constitution if it's not such a big deal? So I would say whether it's stars, whether it's citizens, everyone ought to. But at the same time, we can't be telling each other. We can only tell ourselves. It's our conscience if we care enough. And everybody has different predicaments, whether it's out of fear, whether they're choosing not to, whether they're fence-sitters. I don't subscribe to this idea of kind of calling names just because somebody has made a certain choice. It's their decision. We are not here to pass judgments on that. We are here to try and garner as much support. Of course, we are here to appeal to everyone. Bigger stars have a bigger circle of influence. So, of course, it would be a great help if they did, like Deepika did. Just her going to JNU and standing with the students was a mark of saying that, I stand with you, protesting about these very unconstitutional, inhumane laws. And of course, it had an impact. But, it's still uncomfortable to just be telling each other or putting a gun and trolling people one way or another. That I definitely don't subscribe to.
The divisiveness also seems to be working in a way in which perhaps our literature, our history, it seems to be as if it's being rewritten.
Yes.
This entire controversy about Faiz's poem. Interestingly, Faiz was one of Manto's contemporaries.
Oh my God. Yes. In fact, I've used one of Faiz's poems as well. Even at the end, I've used Faiz's poem, Bol ke lab azad hai tere, bol zubaan ab tak teri hai. This is what, in a way, we are wanting to do. And Hum Dekhenge is like one of those great protest poems. If anybody understands the context, when Faiz wrote it and how he wrote it to kind of against the dominant power, the power that was stifling, freedom of expression, I can't even imagine. It's sort of really surprising to even think that a protest poem and someone like Faiz will be accused of being bigoted or being partisan or being anti-anything. He was a true liberal like Manto, and they were a different breed. We should be learning from them instead of vilifying them on such wrong. To misinterpret Faiz and Faiz's, especially this song, मतलब goosebumps हो जाते हैं ये गाना सुनकर. You know, when so yeah, it is pretty sad. And in fact, some people like Ranveer Shori and Chetan Bhagat, who are otherwise quite positive about this government, even they have spoken up against it. Then how can we even think about this poem in a way that they are trying to color it and, you know, misinterpret it, and and what they are trying to do with this poem is really very sad.
Finally, Nandita, if you had to name a few Mantos today, who would they be?
Well, there are so many. You know, the reason I wouldn't like to take names, because there are so many nameless, faceless people who are really giving their lives. You know, how many people, there's a professor who's in jail. There are, you know, so-called urban Naxals who are in jail. There was a Gauri Lankesh and a Dabolkar who got killed for speaking up. You know, so there are so many, you know, Irom Sharmila, who for so many years fought against the government for, you know, the kind of laws that were there, which were very inhuman. So there are so many, and there are so many students. You look at these students, who are these people? We're talking about stars. Even a scratch if a star or an eminent person has, there would be such a ruckus about it. Look at all these youngsters who are, you know, coming from far off places, standing there, sitting for hours. I met some of the people at the protest, and they had come from like 40-50 kilometers, and I was like, why did you come? He says, no, we want to save India. You know, that's what they said. So it wouldn't be fair to name, because I think there are many. The Mantos are not only the ones that are known, but also those that are speaking to power and that are so courageous, fearlessly sort of upholding our constitution and you know, human rights issues.
Nandita Das, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you. I hope you will read and see the pictures of